Hello Frankfurt, hello YouTube, and welcome to the review of the full frame camera 2018. You can guess, today it's all about the brand new and outrageously cheap Sony Alpha 7 III. But that's not all. We compared it with the 2-year-old Canon EOS 5D Mark IV. Everyone who has €2,300 will be able to purchase the body or the kit with the 28 to 70mm for €2,500. This camera suits to everyone who wants to start with full frame photography. You will get 24 megapixels for sharp photos, 4K HDR video, slow motion captures, and a fast working autofocus. Enjoy this review. Let's start with the body of the Sony Alpha 7 III. It measures 13 x 10 x 7.5 centimeters and weighs 650 grams, including the memory card and the battery, while the Canon EOS 5D Mark IV is slightly bigger and measures 15 x 12 x 7.6 centimeters, with a weight of 850 grams, including the battery and the memory card. The mode dial of the Sony Alpha 7 III does not have any lock button, while the mode dial of the 5D Mark IV has a lock to prevent any changes by mistake. Both cameras are equipped with a hot shoe to attach an external video light, a flash, or an external microphone. The electronic viewfinder of the Sony measures 1.3 centimeters, covers 100% with a resolution of 2.4 million dots, and of course it's using the battery of the camera itself. You'll be able to change all the settings in the electronic viewfinder and basically see the final footage already. While the Canon has only an optical viewfinder, which covers also 100%, it does not need any battery power, but you can't view the camera menu or see the final footage through the optical viewfinder. Both cameras have now a thumb controller for fast operation to adjust any settings, move through the photo during playback, or adjust the focus point. The monitor of the Sony measures 3 inch. It is an LCD screen which covers 100%, but here we come to the first point. It has a poor resolution of only 920,000 dots. It's adjustable by 107 degrees up and 41 degrees down. It has a touch function for focusing, but there's no touch function if you run through the menu with your finger. While the screen of the Canon measures 3.5 inch, covers 100% with a resolution of 1.6 million dots. It's a fixed screen, but it's a full usable touch display. Both cameras are using a dual memory card slot, while the Sony has 2 SD slots, but only the lower one offers UHS 2 with a throttle speed of only 100 megabytes per second. On the 5D we have an SD slot and a CF slot. One big disadvantage is the buffer, which we'll talk in a few minutes. Unfortunately, there is no head display on the Sony, while the 5D offers a head display for fast changing of the shutter speed, the aperture, the ISO. Both cameras are equipped with a headphone jack, a port for an external microphone, USB and HDMI, while the Sony is being charged through the micro USB port, and the Canon offers a 3.0 USB port for fast transferring of photos and videos to your computer. Let's have a look at the continuous drive of the Sony Alpha 7. It's offering a powerful continuous shooting for up to 10 frames per second. You'll be able to downgrade to 8, 6 and 3 photos per second for an impressive 89 photos in RAW at once, which is ideal for sport and wildlife photography. The only disadvantage here, you are unable to use the camera as long as it's buffering. In comparison, we have the 5D Mark IV, which offers just 7 frames per second or 4.3 photos during live view. Despite the fact we used a fast CF and SD card, the buffer lasts only for 21 photos at once with the CF and 19 photos using the SD slot. A lot less than the Sony Alpha 7 III. But in fact, you should ask yourself, How often do I really need such a high burst rate? If you are shooting wildlife and sports, go for the Sony. But to be honest with you, the 5D Mark IV takes a few frames less, but that has never been an issue for me. Till today I was able to do everything I want with 7 frames per second on the 5D Mark IV. Next topic, the integrated image stabilizer of the Sony Alpha 7. It is equipped with an integrated 5-axis image stabilizer for longer shutter speeds, but it's not really helpful while walking, so you can't really replace a gimbal. The 5D Mark IV has no image stabilizer at all, like many other Canon DSLRs have, already in the lower price segment. For this test, we disabled the image stabilizer of the lens while walking with the Canon camera. What do you think from that footage? Does it really help or not? Just place a comment below. Let's talk about the dynamic range of the Sony Alpha 7 III. At first sight, you will notice that the entire image looks well illuminated, better than the Canon image. Take a look at the dark corners with all the details. I put a bunch of files in the description below for you, so you can have a look by yourself at home in Adobe Lightroom. The 2-year-older Canon EOS 5D Mark IV is not as good as the new Sony Alpha 7. Taking a look at dark parts in the image seem to have less details, although you can bring back some details in post-processing, but not as many as on the Sony. Since today, I was able to do everything with the 5D I wanted to do, also in terms of dynamic range and boosting some of my photos. But I think the Sony is much better than my 5D, unfortunately. Let's talk about the real reason why I decided to get the Sony Alpha 7 in the 3rd generation. Because of video recording. You can record your footage in 4K with a maximum of 30 frames per second in NTSC and 60 megabytes or 25 frames per second in PAL. If you wish to record your footage in 4K HDR, that's possible as well, without any crop factor at 25 frames per second. Full HD video recording in NTSC is possible with an impressive frame rate of 120 frames per second, including audio recording without any loss in quality. It's perfect for slow motion captures either during post-processing or using the S&Q mode accessible over the upper mode dial. You can choose between many cine profiles, so as S-Log2 and S-Log3. I put a bunch of video files in the description below for personal use. 2 years ago, I decided to get the Canon EOS 5D Mark IV for video recording, till I realized that I was unable to record my video footage in 4K because of the useless codec. 7 minutes of a video recording resembled 64 gigabytes of memory card. Apart from the absolutely useless codec is the 1.4 crop factor. I was never unhappy with the video mode in general. I was able to record my footage in 1080p with a maximum frame rate of 60 frames per second, which is not as good for slow motion captures as the frame rate of the Sony Alpha 7 III. An absolute joke about the slow motion feature of the 5D Mark IV is 720p video recording only. Who is using 720p nowadays? So absolutely useless for that price. Additionally, if you want to have a C-Log, that's an additional feature for €100 extra. In all aspects, the Sony Alpha 7 III is an outstanding camera in terms of video recording. 4K till ISO 102,400 S-Log Full HD with 120 frames per second with a useful codec. On the 5D, I was unhappy with the 1.4 crop, 4K with an absolute useless codec, 1080p with only 60 frames per second, an ISO limit in 4K video recording at 12,800, so there are not many pros for the 5D in terms of video recording. The main purpose of the Sony Alpha 7 in the 3rd generation for me is video recording, but of course it takes great photos as well. You have many details from corner to corner, taken with the 24 to 70mm G Master lens, so as the Canon 24mm f1.4 70-200 f2.8 using the Sigma MC11 adapter. The photos are available for download, the link is in the video description below for home analysis. Good about the Sony camera is that we have a fast working autofocus system for snapshots for the city, the zoo or your next holiday. We have a great dynamic range for perfect illumination from corner to corner. I'm absolutely happy with the photo results of my 5D Mark IV. It's my main body and it's reliable for photo shootings. Many photos here were taken with the 24-105 and the 70-200mm and of course the 24mm f1.4. You'll be able to compare all photos at home. I put a bunch of them in the video description below. To be honest with you, the photos of the 5D Mark IV are a bit too contrasty, less illuminated, and dark spots seem to be more black than dark. To summarize it, the Sony offers more dynamic range than the 5D Mark IV. It has 10 frames per second during continuous shooting and it's using a 24 megapixel sensor instead of 30 megapixels on the 5D Mark IV. The 5D Mark IV offers less dynamic range than the Sony. It has more megapixels for large printouts and of course for crops, but the photos have slightly more contrast than the Sony. Let's have a brief look on the operation of both cameras. Sony has slightly improved using different color pattern in the menu like Canon does it for many years. But anyways, we have a lot more submenus than on the 5D Mark IV. So it takes a bit more time to get really used to it. And a big disadvantage here, Sony does not offer a full usable touch display. Many points are squeezed into the camera's menu and we're hoping for an improvement with the next generation. The Canon 5D Mark IV is much more easy to use. It's intuitive through big icons and the font. It's clear and it's a really easy to use camera in combination with your smartphone using the Canon Camera Connect app. Apart from that, we have a full usable touch display to get from A to B more quick. Next but not least important topic is the autofocus system. We have an ultra high speed focusing system and many AF points spread across the sensor from corner to corner on the Sony Alpha 7 in the 3rd generation. I was really impressed about the eye autofocus following your eyes even with an adapter. You'll be now able to use the touch display for focusing during video recording, but it takes a bit longer to focus than with the 5D Mark IV. On the 5D Mark IV we have less focus points, they are put more into the center of the sensor, so they are not spread from corner to corner. In our test it took less time to focus during live view recording and low light conditions with the 5D Mark IV. In general I would say we have more AF points with the Sony Alpha 7, an impressive eye autofocus system to keep everyone's eyes in focus. On the 5D Mark IV we have less focus points, but a faster focus during video recording, especially in low light conditions, but I would give the point anyways to Sony. Almost at the end we talk about the colors, which look more natural on the Sony than on the Canon. It looks more like what I really see with my eyes. Also the white balance is not as saturated as the Canon during low ambient light scenarios on the street. Make sure to have a look by yourself, and as I said, there are a bunch of photos in the video description below. The photos taken with the 5D Mark IV look more saturated with a kind of a red stitch, especially during low light shots. They have more contrast than needed and the white balance is not as good as with the Sony body. Last but one of the most important topics is the low light performance. The 5D Mark IV offers more megapixels, but I expect about the same performance as with the Sony camera. We'll have a look. Both cameras look about the same in the lower ISO ranges till ISO 6400. As soon as we approach ISO 12800, we start seeing some differences already. It looks already super grainy with ISO 32000 on the Canon side and slightly better on the Sony side. You can see that the lines are not straight anymore. There's also a bit of color distortion, looks kind of chromatic aberrations on the Canon side. And I know it has nothing to do with chromatic aberrations, I'm just saying it because of the magenta looking colors. ISO 102,400 is the upper ISO limit of your 5D Mark IV. ISO 160,000 has almost the same performance as the 5D Mark IV with ISO 102,400, and last but not least, ISO 204,800 on my Sony looks still usable for Sherlock Holmes investigations with lots of grain, but not worse than your phone. Using a loop confirms our assessment with the previous images. At ISO 12,800, the faces at the end of the photo looking still sharp and not as bad with the Canon. The colors on the Sony look more natural and less overseen by kind of chromatic aberrations. Sorry for saying that word, but I don't have any suitable explanation for it. Both cameras have a great low-light performance. The Sony camera has a higher ISO limit than the Canon. It goes to ISO 204,800 but does not focus as precise as the Canon at extreme dark spots. If Canon would not have color distortion, they would be almost about the same level. Don't forget that the body of the 5D Mark IV is 2 years older than the Sony. Let's summarize. Sony, absolutely great camera. It's probably below its real market value with a great dynamic range. It has much improved in terms of operation, for instance with a thumb controller. A long-lasting battery performance. I was impressed about the eye autofocus, which worked fantastic, also using an adapter with my Canon lenses. The video performance pushes Canon miles behind. 4K with a usable codec, 120 frames in Full HD for great slow motion captures, and a dual SD slot with an outstanding low light performance. I love Canon since I got my first EOS 550D many years ago. Everyone will get comfortable within a short period of time. It's reliable, has a long-lasting battery performance, and many lenses are cheaper than the Sony ones, but older as well. The autofocus during video recording worked much faster and more precise than with the Sony. The dynamic range is great, but not as great as with the Sony. A big disadvantage is the video mode. 4K with a crop of 1.4, an ISO limit, and 1080p with only 60 frames per second instead of 120. I have no choice with the codec, which seems to be unusable on the 5D. Lowlight is great for my work I'm doing, but it might not be enough for the stuff you're doing, but that depends on you. The Canon has more megapixel to offer if you like large printouts and if you require to crop some files. Canon seems to be a bit behind, kind of an Apple style, only giving minor bits instead of what they really have. A good usability does not make the final video or photo. In this case, I would go for the Sony. Sony costs so much less for what it's able to offer. If you choose today for your first camera, go for the Sony. If you have tons of lenses, it's not worth unless using an adapter and losing a lot of money with your gear by selling it on eBay. If you are new and you have to choose, take the Sony camera. Now enjoy the audio test taken with the internal microphone of the Sony Alpha 7 of the 3rd generation. Thanks for watching. If you have still any questions, please feel free to state a comment below. Thanks for thumbs up and your subscription. See you soon. Tschüss aus Frankfurt. That's the internal microphone of the Sony Alpha 7 in the 3rd generation. Thanks for watching. See you soon und tschüss aus Frankfurt.